The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the low hum of alien dialects, a cacophony of voices blending together in a language foreign, yet somehow commanding. The Grand Hall was an architectural marvel, vast and imposing, with polished obsidian floors that reflected the ambient glow of pale blue lights emanating from crystalline fixtures. Delegates of every known species occupied their designated seats, their appearances as diverse as their homeworlds. Tentacled beings, scaled diplomats, and creatures whose translucent bodies pulsed with bioluminescent colors all turned their attention to the lone human entering the chamber. Victor Kane walked with deliberate calmness, his tailored black suit a stark contrast to the flamboyant regalia of the other species. His unassuming demeanor belied the significance of the moment. Humanity's representative was here, standing before a council that had little more than disdain for his kind. The humans, after all, were new to the galactic stage, an upstart species from a backwater planet with limited resources and no notable achievements. To most of the council, Kane's presence was a formality, a courtesy extended to a species too naive to understand its place. The council president, a towering Varnock with chitinous plates covering its elongated body, began the proceedings. Its voice reverberated through the chamber, dripping with condescension. Victor Kane, representative of humanity, you stand here accused of unauthorized incursions into restricted systems. Your species has violated the boundaries set by this council, displaying reckless behavior unfit for an interstellar community. What do you have to say in your defense? Victor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Members of the council, he began, his voice steady, humanity has always sought cooperation and mutual respect. Any perceived incursions were exploratory missions, driven by our curiosity and need for survival. We meant no disrespect. A ripple of disdainful murmurs spread through the chamber. The Varnock leader's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of irritation. Your curiosity, as you call it, disrupted the ecosystems of 3 planetary systems. Your need for survival does not justify your recklessness. This council does not tolerate such transgressions. Another alien, a gelatinous mass of shifting colors known as the Thren, chimed in. Humans are primitives, barely understanding the technologies they wield. Perhaps it is time we remind them of the hierarchy here. Victor's eyes flickered for a moment, his face remaining composed. He understood the politics at play. Humanity had been allowed a seat at the table, but it was clear they were not truly welcome. The council saw them as expendable, a species to be tolerated until they overstepped their bounds. Today's accusations were less about justice and more about reinforcing that dynamic. I believe this council values evidence over hearsay, Victor replied, his tone measured but firm. Humanity has adhered to the agreements laid out during our induction. If there have been errors, we are more than willing to address them. But you dare to lecture us, the Varnock leader interrupted, its voice booming. Humans have grown arrogant. Perhaps a reminder is in order. Victor said nothing, allowing the silence to stretch. His calmness unsettled some of the delegates, though they wouldn't admit it. The Varnock leader seized the moment, gesturing to a group of armored guards stationed along the walls. Escort the human to a holding chamber. We will decide their fate shortly. Victor didn't resist as the guards surrounded him. He moved without protest, his steps steady. The council chamber erupted into chatter, various species debating the audacity of humanity and the necessity of action. No one paid attention to the faint smile that briefly flickered across Victor's lips as he was led away. The holding chamber was stark and clinical, illuminated by harsh, white lights. Victor sat on a simple chair, his hands resting on his knees. The guards positioned themselves at the door, their weapons trained on him. The air was heavy with tension, but Victor remained relaxed, as though he were simply waiting for a meeting to start. The guards, hulking creatures with insectoid features, exchanged glances. One of them finally spoke, its voice grating. You should be afraid, human. The council does not take kindly to insubordination. Victor looked up, his gaze steady. Afraid? Of what? The guard sneered, or what passed for a sneer among its kind. You'll find out soon enough. The council doesn't tolerate weakness. Victor's smile returned, faint but deliberate. Neither does humanity. The guard's antennae twitched, but before it could respond, a subtle vibration coursed through the room. It was barely perceptible, but Victor noticed. He shifted slightly in his seat, the smile fading as his expression turned neutral once more. Far above in the council chamber, the Varnock leader addressed the assembly. "This is a lesson for all of you," it declared, its voice resonating. "Humanity must learn its place. And if they refuse, we will make an example of them." The other delegates murmured in agreement. The council's arrogance was palpable, their confidence in their superiority unshakable. None of them considered the possibility that they might be wrong. The guards didn't realize their mistake until it was too late. The subtle vibration that had coursed through the holding chamber wasn't an environmental malfunction, it was a signal. Victor Kane, seated in what appeared to be an unarmed and vulnerable position, had merely been waiting for the precise moment to act. When the first guard moved closer, attempting to impose its towering presence, Victor's hand darted out with an unnatural precision. A small, concealed device he had palmed earlier emitted a sharp pulse of energy, instantly disabling the creature. It collapsed to the floor, its weapon clattering beside it. The other guards froze, their antennae twitching in confusion, but Victor was already moving. With a swift motion, he seized the fallen weapon and fired 2 shots in quick succession, striking the remaining guards with unnerving accuracy. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the weapon in his hand. Victor stood, adjusting his tie as if nothing had happened, his expression cold and calculated. The door to the holding chamber slid open, revealing more armored soldiers. They hesitated upon seeing the fallen guards, but Victor didn't give them time to recover. He moved with lethal efficiency, his actions betraying a level of combat training far beyond what a diplomat should possess. The weapon in his hand became an extension of his will, each shot perfectly placed. Within moments, the corridor outside the chamber was littered with incapacitated bodies. Victor paused, listening. The faint hum of distant machinery and muffled voices reached his ears. His movements were deliberate as he retrieved a small, metallic disc from his jacket pocket and pressed it against the wall. The device emitted a series of rapid beeps before creating a localized disruption in the security systems. Surveillance cameras flickered and went dark, and the automated locks on nearby doors disengaged. The ambush had been expected. Victor had prepared for it long before stepping into the council chamber. He wasn't just a diplomat. He was humanity's most lethal operative, a ghost whose name struck fear into those who knew of his reputation. The galaxy had once whispered tales of a human known only as Baba Yaga, a shadowy figure who operated on the fringes of war and diplomacy. Most believed him to be a myth, a story created to intimidate. The council was about to learn otherwise. Victor moved through the corridors like a predator stalking prey. Every step was calculated, every turn deliberate. He encountered resistance at multiple points, teams of alien soldiers sent to contain him, but none of them were prepared for the sheer ruthlessness of his response. His weapons were precise, but his mind was his greatest asset. He used the environment to his advantage, disabling opponents with traps and misdirection. By the time reinforcements arrived, he was already gone, leaving behind only chaos and fear. Word of the incident began to spread among the council's forces. Reports of the human diplomat overpowering entire squads reached the ears of the Varnock leader, who refused to believe them. "Impossible," it hissed, slamming a clawed appendage against the table. "He is one man. Find him and end this." But the panic was already setting in. Victor's actions weren't just a display of physical prowess, they were psychological warfare. Every incapacitated guard, every bypass security measure, was a message. He was in control, and the council's forces were powerless to stop him. In the depths of the council building, Victor accessed a secured terminal. His fingers moved swiftly across the interface as he downloaded critical data, evidence of the council's corruption, their manipulations, and their plans to undermine humanity. This wasn't just about survival, it was about leverage. Humanity would not be subjugated, and Victor would ensure the council understood the cost of their arrogance. As he worked, a team of elite soldiers closed in on his position. These weren't the standard guards, they were highly trained operatives, equipped with advanced weaponry and armor. Victor noted their approach through the terminal's security feed. He finished the download and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The soldiers entered the room in formation, their weapons trained on Victor. "Surrender," their leader commanded, its voice distorted by the helmet. "You have no escape." Victor raised his hands, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You're right," he said calmly. "I don't need one." Before the soldiers could react, Victor activated a device on his wrist. The room was engulfed in a blinding flash of light, disorienting the operatives. By the time their vision cleared, Victor was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his footsteps in the corridor. The Varnock leader received the report moments later, its mandibles clicking in frustration. "Seal the exits," it ordered. "He cannot leave this facility." But Victor had already anticipated their response. As the council scrambled to contain him, he navigated the labyrinthine corridors with the ease of someone who had memorized the layout. He moved toward his ultimate objective, a central command hub where he could broadcast a message to the entire council. When he arrived, the room was heavily guarded, but Victor didn't hesitate. He disabled the outer defenses with a well-placed explosive charge, creating an opening. The guards inside barely had time to react before he entered, neutralizing them with a combination of precision shooting and hand-to-hand combat. Within minutes, the room was secure. Victor approached the central console, his expression grim. He activated the system, linking it to the council's communication network. His voice, calm and unyielding, echoed through every corner of the facility. "You thought humanity was weak," he began, his tone devoid of emotion. "You thought you could betray us without consequence. That was your first mistake. Your second was underestimating me." The message was brief, but effective. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. The council had pushed humanity too far, and now they would face the consequences. Victor cut the transmission and prepared for the next phase. The council's arrogance had set this chain of events into motion, and he would ensure they reaped what they had sown. The transmission reverberated through the council's ranks like a shockwave. Delegates from dozens of species stared at their individual screens, each frozen in disbelief as Victor Kane's voice echoed in their chambers. The implications of his words, coupled with the undeniable chaos spreading within the council's own headquarters, shattered the illusion of control. Whispers of fear and doubt began circulating among the gathered representatives, their confidence eroding with every passing moment. The Varnock leader seethed in its command room, issuing frantic orders to its subordinates. "Find him. Seal every passage. Call in reinforcements if you must, but do not let him leave this facility alive." Its clawed hands slammed against the console in frustration. What had started as a calculated display of power against a so-called primitive species had spiraled into a nightmare. Unbeknownst to the council, Victor was already steps ahead. Moving through the underbelly of the sprawling complex, he evaded patrols and automated drones with uncanny precision. He had studied the layout long before arriving, analyzing weak points and redundancies. Every movement was part of a larger plan, every step calculated to maximize the psychological and logistical damage he was inflicting. His mission wasn't just escape, it was dismantling the council's arrogance brick by brick. As Victor navigated the corridors, he began implementing the next phase of his plan. Small, inconspicuous devices were planted at key structural points throughout the facility. Each one emitted a faint pulse, syncing with the others to form a network. These weren't simple explosives, they were signal disruptors designed to cripple the council's communication and defense systems. Victor's goal was clear: show the council that their overwhelming technological advantage was meaningless in the face of human ingenuity. Meanwhile, the council's elite forces regrouped, their numbers bolstered by reinforcements. They moved with precision, sweeping through the facility in search of their elusive target. Their advanced scanners and tracking equipment should have made it impossible for Victor to hide, yet he remained undetected. Frustration grew among their ranks as they found nothing but the aftermath of his calculated strikes: disabled security systems, incapacitated guards, and equipment rendered useless. The council chamber itself had devolved into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices a mixture of fear and anger. Some demanded immediate action, calling for the deployment of entire fleets to subjugate humanity, while others urged caution, fearing retaliation. The Varnock leader struggled to maintain control, its authority slipping as the crisis deepened. In the midst of this turmoil, a message appeared on every screen within the chamber. It was a live feed, showing Victor standing in an undisclosed location within the facility. His expression was calm, his demeanor composed, but his words carried an undeniable weight. "You've made a critical error," Victor stated, his voice cutting through the noise. "You assumed humanity's willingness to cooperate was a weakness. You believed our patience was submission. Today, you've learned otherwise." The council delegates fell silent, their eyes fixed on the screen. Victor continued, his tone unwavering. "This isn't just about humanity. Your arrogance, your belief in your own superiority, it's a threat to every species you deem beneath you. You've abused your power for too long. That ends now." The Varnock leader's mandibles clicked in fury as it interrupted the broadcast. "Enough of this. Capture him. Now. Shut this transmission down." But Victor's message had already planted seeds of doubt. Some delegates began questioning the council's actions, their allegiance wavering. Victor wasn't just fighting for humanity. He was exposing the fragile foundation of the council's authority. The cracks in their unity were beginning to show. As Victor's voice faded from the screens, he activated the disruptor network. The facility trembled as systems overloaded, plunging sections of the building into darkness. Alarms blared, and chaos erupted as council forces scrambled to regain control. Communications faltered, leaving units isolated and vulnerable. It was a masterstroke of tactical brilliance, executed with surgical precision. Victor used the ensuing chaos to his advantage, moving toward his extraction point. Despite the disarray, he remained vigilant. The council's elite forces were still hunting him, their determination unshaken. He encountered resistance along the way, but each confrontation ended the same way, with Victor emerging victorious. His movements were relentless, his resolve unshakable. As he neared his destination, Victor paused briefly to assess his surroundings. The corridor ahead led to the facility's primary hangar, where a small, unassuming ship awaited him. It was a carefully chosen vessel, designed for stealth and speed, capable of evading even the most advanced tracking systems. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The council had fortified the hangar, anticipating his escape route. Victor took a deep breath, centering himself. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would do so again. This mission wasn't just about survival, it was about sending a message. The council needed to understand that humanity would not be subjugated, that their attempts to control and intimidate would only strengthen humanity's resolve. With that thought in mind, Victor moved forward, his focus unwavering. The final confrontation loomed ahead, a testament to the council's hubris and his own indomitable will. This was no longer a mere diplomatic incident. It was a declaration of humanity's place among the stars, earned through determination, ingenuity, and an unyielding spirit. The hangar bay was a fortress, a last bastion of security fortified with layers of automated defenses and elite soldiers. Every entry point was sealed, and the air shimmered with the faint hum of energy barriers. It was a visual representation of the council's desperation to prevent Victor Kane from escaping. Yet, as the soldiers prepared for the inevitable encounter, an unease settled over them. They had seen the reports, heard the whispered fears of their comrades. This was no ordinary human, they were up against a legend. Victor approached with quiet determination, his mind focused and unyielding. He studied the hangar's defenses from the shadows, noting every guard's position, every patrol route, and every potential weak point. The disruptor network he had activated earlier still caused intermittent outages in the facility's systems, and he intended to exploit every second of instability. The first move was precise and calculated. Victor hacked into a nearby maintenance terminal, bypassing its security protocols with practiced ease. The hangar lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the area into intermittent darkness. Confusion rippled through the guards as their communications faltered, their coordinated defenses slipping into disarray. It was the opening Victor needed. He moved swiftly, a shadow among the chaos. The first set of guards fell silently, incapacitated before they could raise an alarm. Their weapons were rendered useless as Victor jammed the hangar's energy-based systems, forcing the soldiers to rely on outdated, kinetic weaponry they were less adept with. Each step he took toward the extraction point was deliberate, every action a precise blend of strategy and execution. The remaining soldiers regrouped, rallying under the command of their captain, a towering figure in reinforced armor. "Hold the line," the captain barked, its voice steady despite the unraveling situation. "He's one man. He cannot pass us all." But Victor wasn't fighting them head-on. He used the environment to his advantage, triggering automated machinery to create diversions, forcing the guards to split their attention. The confusion deepened as Victor systematically dismantled their defensive positions, one calculated strike at a time. The captain's confidence faltered as the casualties mounted, and it became clear that this was no ordinary adversary. Victor reached the ship, a sleek, unassuming craft that had been hidden in plain sight. As he powered it up, the hangar's automated defenses surged back to life. Turrets locked onto his position, and the energy barriers blocking the exit flickered back online. The Council's final line of defense had activated, and it was formidable. The captain and the remaining soldiers converged on Victor's position, their weapons trained on the ship. "Surrender now," the captain demanded, its voice echoing through the hangar. "You cannot escape." Victor's response was swift and unequivocal. The ship's concealed weapon systems roared to life, firing precise bursts that disabled the turrets and blasted holes in the energy barriers. The soldiers scattered, scrambling for cover as Victor expertly piloted the ship toward the exit. As the ship cleared the hangar and shot into the void of space, Victor activated the final phase of his plan. The disruptor network within the facility reached critical mass, emitting a pulse that disabled the Council's tracking systems and left their fleet blind. The facility shuddered under the strain of the disruption, its once impenetrable defenses reduced to chaos. In the command room, the Varnock leader stared at the empty hangar feed, its claws trembling with rage. "This isn't over," it hissed, but the words rang hollow. The Council had been humiliated, its authority undermined by a single human who had outmaneuvered their best efforts at every turn. Victor's ship vanished into the vast expanse of space, leaving behind a facility in disarray and a Council grappling with the consequences of their actions. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, the evidence he had retrieved safely stored in the ship's databanks. It was more than enough to expose the Council's corruption and rally other species to humanity's cause. As the stars blurred into streaks of light around him, Victor allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. This mission had been more than a victory, it was a statement. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated or manipulated. They were players in the galactic arena now, and they would shape their own destiny. The Council's betrayal had set this in motion, but Victor's actions had ensured that humanity would not just survive, they would thrive. The name Baba Yaga would spread across the galaxy, a reminder of the price of arrogance and the strength of human resolve.